One of the causes that I've always thought the church was very good at were things called almshouses, which were basically houses that would be built on church estates for the needy. Not only did they want to spend £100 million on this fund, that they wanted to spend £1 billion on reparations as well. But why not spend 100 million or £1 billion on a new generation of almshouses, as opposed to just helping one group of people, black British people? Why not just help all people in need?
Alex?
Well, I just don't understand what the Church of England is trying to do. It's on its deathbed.
Congregations have reduced. I mean, deathbed is maybe a little bit...
Look, if we look over 20 years, it's dramatically lower than it used to be. And a lot of criticism from actual Christians come from the values that the Church of England are now propagating. And Justin Welby has a lot to answer for because, not only are we seeing in the news this mass conversion of illegal immigrants to a gay mass system in the UK, but now we're seeing them spending money... And as Albie actually pointed out correctly, in a way that doesn't really benefit broader society, it benefits a very small group of people. So I just don't know where it's going to end. This committee has also said £1 million's not enough. It's 100 million, sorry.
Church commissioners are now hoping for a target of £1 billion.
I mean, it's woke nonsense, isn't it?
You could make the argument that this is charity. Justin Welby's job is to be a virtue signaller, is it not?
Should charity discriminate? I mean, that's what he's saying. We're only going to give this to people from a specific skin colour or background. I don't think that's very Christian of them.
Good morning to you. It's 9:30 on Friday, 22nd of March. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Ben Leo, and Pip Thompson.
Own goal for Nike. The American sportswear brand has been slammed for changing the St George's cross on the New England football kit. Is it ever OK to tamper with the national flag? Shadow Attorney General Emily Thornberry gave her thoughts to GB News.
What have Nike done? I mean, seriously, you can hardly recognise it as the England flag, can you? I mean, England flag is a simple white background and a red cross. Seems to me, why can't they just leave it alone?
The fine one to talk, isn't she? Sickness benefit surge. The cost of those out of work will increase by more than a third by the end of the decade. Do we need to get tough on those out of work?
Lancaster Landmark, a charity constructing a full-size Avro Lancaster monument to the World War II bomber used by the RAF, needs funding to finish the job. Needs your help. We'll bring you that report shortly.
And ITV's come under fire for a commissioner allegedly telling industry execs that the broadcaster, quote, does not want white men as talent. We'll have the latest.
So, plenty to get you exercise this morning. In a few minutes, we are going to be talking to Lee Anderson about his thoughts on this England shirt.
Wonder what he'll have to say.
Oh, well, I've got an idea. I don't think he's very happy, but we want to hear from you too. gbviews@gbnews.com. Let's get your latest headlines now. Here you go.
Pip, Ben, thank you very much. Good morning from the GB Newsroom. It's just gone 9:32. The top story this morning, Sir Geoffrey Cox has warned that Labour's projected landslide at the next general election, he says, could annihilate a credible opposition. The former Attorney-General says a win for Sir Keir Starmer would leave the Conservatives without a front bench and called it a very dangerous thing for democracy. In a GB News exclusive, the MP said that Rishi Sunak is a serious administrator, but suggested the Prime Minister needs to reveal more of himself to sway voters.
100-seat majority, 80-seat majority is big, but the proposal at the moment, the suggestion that Labour might win a 200-seat majority effectively annihilates any credible opposition. That's bad for democracy. But on our part, we need to show why.
Legislation in England and Wales is being updated to crack down on spiking and to make it clear that it's a crime. The most recent figures show more than 560 spiking offences are reported every month, involving food, drink, needles and modified vapes. Campaigners say the true number of victims could be even higher. However, the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, says the updated law will hold perpetrators to account.
We know that with the drugs that are prevalent in spiking, that speed is of the essence. And of course what we're doing is we're updating the legislation to make it clear and unambiguous that spiking is a crime. We prioritise the prevention of crimes against women and girls, and the people who perpetrate spiking will be held to account.
Well, as we've been hearing this morning, Sir Keir Starmer has now backed calls for Nike to scrap its new England football kit after redesigning the St George's Cross. The brand dropped the traditional red and white colours on the collar and replaced it with purple and blue stripes. The company says the change was a playful update ahead of the Euro 2024. However, critics, including the Labour leader, say the alteration undermines the unifying symbol. And Sir Keir Starmer's also claimed the price of £125 for the shirt should be reduced. And offenders nationwide will be tasked with cleaning up vandalism within 48 hours of cases being reported to local councils in a bid to swiftly tackle antisocial behaviour. The Ministry of Justice says teams of people serving community sentences will scrub graffiti and collect litter, with the programme rolling out across England and Wales following a successful pilot in several regions. The move comes as main political parties are ramping up commitments on law and order ahead of the upcoming general election. Those are the headlines. Plenty more still to come with Ben and Pip. And in the meantime, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the code there on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks very much, Sam. Good morning. Welcome to Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Ben Leo and Pip Thompson. The fury.
Well, there's only one story doing the rounds.
Only one story in town today. The fury growing over the FA and Nike's decision to change the St George's flag on England's new football kit.
Yeah, so the new kit features a modified flag using purple and blue horizontal stripes. You can see it on your telly now. In what the manufacturers, Nike, have called, quote, a playful update.
The World Cup winning goalkeeper, Peter Shilton, spoke about this on GB News a little earlier.
Well, I'm totally against it, which I don't think is a surprise. I mean, I'm a traditionalist, really. But I think, you know, we've seen a lot of design changes on shirts. I think that's to get the fans to buy the new shirt every time it changes. But now they're messing with the colours on a national flag, and you know, where would it stop once it starts? You know, is the next shirt going to be going to have more changes in the colour? So I'm against it. I think it's wrong.
What have Nike done? I mean, seriously, you can hardly recognise it as the England flag, can you? I mean, England flag is a simple white background and a red cross. Seems to me, why can't they just leave it alone?
OK, so you heard from former England goalkeeper Peter Shilton and Shadow Attorney General Labour's Emily Thornberry. She had a little bit of a different take on this a few years ago.
Yeah, she's a fine one to talk. Was it 10 years ago she posted that, you know, rather derogatory picture of somebody's house with a white van outside and an England flag, a St George's flag, hanging out the front of it, sneering at it? She was forced to apologise, I think, and she ended up falling on her sword for it. Now, though, clearly Labour have been briefed about it, haven't they? To kind of, you know, call for the kit to be reversed. Do you believe Starmer when he says it should be reversed?
Well, you know, he's given an interview to The Sun. He's obviously appealing for votes and... I don't know. I think, to be fair, this does seem to be an issue this morning that is uniting every single party.
Yeah.
Everybody does appear to actually agree on this. We are yet to hear this morning from the FA. It would be nice to get a comment this morning because you want to know who on earth signed this off. Well, we spoke about Emily Thornberry there and made reference to what happened with her 10 years ago. The photo that she took of a house in Rochester adorned with 3 England flags.
So, yeah, when we challenged her this morning, you obviously saw what she had to say.
It was a photograph, you know, and other people have decided what it was that I was thinking or saying. You know, I mean, as I say, it was a very long time ago. But I did, you know, as far as I was concerned, if it was going to do any damage to the Labour Party, do you know what I did? I resigned. Do you remember when people used to do that when they made a mistake? We haven't seen that forever, I think, from this lot.
So the question is, namby-pamby woke nonsense or just a fuss about nothing? Let's bring in the Reform MP for Ashfield, Lee Anderson, who I'm sure has plenty to say. Lee, there you are, bearing your away England kit, loud and proud. What's your thoughts on this controversy this morning, Lee?
Well, I'll tell you what, Ben, you know when I bang on about we want our country back, this is exactly the sort of woke, namby-pamby, pearl-clutching, hand-wringing nonsense that I'm talking about. And it's a bit rich from Emily Thornberry coming on 10 years later. All of a sudden, she's in love with the flag of St George. She's an absolute hypocrite, and she was right about resigning, and she should resign now, actually. But this, you know, we've got the England team taking the knee. Then we've got the England captain wearing rainbow armbands. Yep. Hypocrites, a lot of them. Now we've got this nonsense. Where does it stop? It's a slippery slope. The FA should hang their heads in shame. I tell you what they should do, guys. They should go into a pub in Ashfield on a Sunday afternoon when the football's on and talk to some real people in the real world. And I tell you what, they'll get chased out of town.
Lee, I just want to put to you, obviously, the other side to this, which is that Nike say it isn't about being woke. It is a nod to the 1966 World Cup winners.
Really? What a load of rubbish that is. You know it's a load of rubbish. It's Nike once again interfering. And I'm surprised, well, I'm not surprised, actually, that the FA is accepting this woke nonsense. And if the players have got any grit about them, they refuse to wear these shirts. Absolutely 100%. I don't know what's going on in this country, guys. It's happening every single day. They're trying to interfere with our history, our heritage, our culture, our sports now. I wear my England shirt with pride. I love the flag of St George. It's a bit of our identity. We should keep it. And I tell you what, I wonder how many other national football team shirts they're interfering with. I bet it's zero.
Yeah, Lee, could you imagine Nike giving a so-called playful update to the Palestinian or Chinese shirts? And by the way, you've already touched on it with regards to Nike and the FA. They've got a history of treating their fans like trash. Not only did Nike thoroughly back the Black Lives Matter campaign, which wasn't just about equality amongst races, it was anti-capitalist, anti-Western, anti-police values. The FA made the England team take the knee for year after year, so did the Premier League. And then we had the Harry Kane rainbow armband, for which Gareth Southgate, the England manager, said that if England fans didn't agree with it, then they were essentially, in so many words, bigots. So do you get the feeling that England fans are kind of being treated, you know, not very well in this respect?
Oh, yeah, we're a bunch of bigots, all right, aren't we? And it's especially when we see some England players going over to countries where they don't treat people of a certain group in a fair way. Like I say, Ben, Pip, they're just a bunch of hypocrites. And one of the biggest hypocrites is probably Gareth Southgate. He's not reading the room. He's not reading the mood of the nation. Some of these players who are idolised by, you know, millions of young people around the world, they need to man up. Am I allowed to say that, man up? I mean, I might be accused of misgendering somebody in the national England football team. It's absolutely ridiculous. And again, this is just another bandwagon which Sakir has jumped on. He sees some mileage in this, some political capital, and he says it's all about the Labour Party. When Emily Thornberry is coming out, adoring the flag of St George, it's just laughable, laughable.
What would you say to those people, Lee? And you know, they're entitled to their view, which is that in recent years, the St George's flag has been hijacked by far-right hooligans. So actually, in doing this, is taking a stand against racism.
I'd tell them to clear off, Pip. It's as simple as that. Probably stronger words.
Lee, this morning, Kensington Palace has refused to comment on this growing story. Of course, Prince William is the president of the FA. Do you think William should at least comment on it or, you know, give his take?
No, I think William should keep his take a leaf out of his late great-grandmother's book and keep his nose out of stuff like this.
What about the cost, Lee? Because the cost of these shirts is also causing a lot of anger. I mean, this shirt for adults, £124.99. For kids, £119.99.
Yeah, well, it would appear, Pippa, that we're living in a cost of England football shirt crisis. I mean, who the hell can afford these shirts at 125 quid? We're telling people in this country that they can't afford to pay for the gas, the electricity, they're going to food banks, etc. And then the FA decide in their wisdom not only to accept a ridiculous football shirt with the with the cross of St George interfered with, but charging people 125 quid for the pleasure of it. What a load of nonsense.
Yeah, I'm sure you already know, Lee, but the previous England shirt for the World Cup was made in a sweatshop in Thailand, so they were flogging them for 150 quid a pop, yet the workers were paid something like £1 an hour, which was below or level at the Thai minimum wage at the time. Can I just change gears very slightly and ask you about Sir Keir Starmer's bet of £50 that you'd lose your seat in Ashfield? What do you make of that?
Well, here's an exclusive for you guys. If he's watching old Flip Flop, I'll bet him £5,000 that he needs to come up to Ashfield and stand against me in Ashfield. I bet him £5 grand that I beat him.
There you go.
How do you like them apples?
Where's that money going to go, Lee?
Where's it going to go? It'll go in my pocket. No, I'm joking. It'll go to one of my local charities. But here you are, Keir. Come on, stand against me. £5 grand. Here's a bet. Come and stand against me in Ashfield. If you beat me, I'll donate £5,000 to a charity of your choice. And if I win, it'll go to our local male suicide support group.
Lee, thanks very much. One final quick question. What's the score going to be tomorrow at Wembley, England-Brazil?
I don't know, mate. 2-0 England.
That's the first time I've ever seen you hesitate or sit on the fence. First time for everything.
Well, you know, we've actually got the best group of English players ever. We've just not got the right manager.
Good man.
And I expect you to be in that shirt, Lee. Not in the new one.
I'll be here.
Thanks, Lee.
See you guys.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Well, our very own Paul Coit joins us in the studio to discuss this more.
Well, follow that, eh?
Well, I mean, the FA, they're in a bit of bother today with this. Do you think they've underestimated...
I think without doubt.
...the feeling?
Yeah, I do without doubt. All these accusations of this flag is a woke flag and there's this and that, I honestly believe. Because if you look at the away shirt, it's very similar. It's a design, and it's almost like what Nike are trying to do is create a brand from this, and that's what it looks like. You know, you're absolutely right when it's a situation of you couldn't do it with any other country. You wouldn't see the Swedish flag, the yellow cross on a blue background suddenly going red or green. That's just not going to work. So what I think they're doing, and also is just use that as a brand. So that's the cross which is on the back, and it's an, you know, I hate to use a pun, but it is an own goal here, because I don't think they realised how much anger and upset it would create.
And
it's not the official...
Are we aware of other kits for the Euros that have been tampered with in a similar way?
Well, not in that way. I mean, I've looked at that, but the first thing I thought of was the only change that we've had recently, and if we go back to 2012 and we go back to the Olympics and the Union flag, which was done in blue. Yeah. And this was a Stella McCartney design. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And I remember looking at it and thinking, hold on, where's the red on that? It's a bit bizarre because everything was done in different shades of blue. There was no furore about it. It was just a design. It was just a scene that this is what we're doing. This is our take on the Union Jack. But there was no major problem around it. Now, as far as England are concerned, the main badge is the 3 lions. That's the thing which has always been on an England shirt going back. If you think of '66, there was no St George's cross anywhere to be seen. It was the 3 lions. Then that obviously was introduced every now and again on an England shirt, and that's their take on it.
And actually, forgetting everything else and the theories behind it, the design isn't that good. Arguably, it would just look better having a bit of colour in it, as it should be.
I think then, Ben, we start getting into looking at shirt design, because I like it. I mean, I do like it, and it's quite simple. But it's when you start here. I mean, the quote here: the trim on the cuffs takes its cues from the training gear worn by England's 1966 heroes. In 1966, it was one shirt fits all. There'd be one shirt. If you were Bobby Moore, you'd get number 6. Anybody else, OK, if it was Jeff Hurst, number 10. Maybe if Jimmy Greaves had it, he'd have to have it with extra long sleeves. There was one shirt. Training gear, I don't know.
Great stuff. Paul Coit, thanks very much. Gareth Southgate, of course, will have his press conference this evening. Very keen to see what he has to say, but still to come this morning, ITV are in a bit of hot water. Find out who they don't want on screen as talent. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Stay with us.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Can you just let us know if there have been people getting into contact with you as a local councillor about how they feel about every lamppost which is supposed to be public, neutral territory, being covered in these flags. Has it made some of your constituents nervous to walk the streets?
It's a complete range of people, including people who are from the Bangladeshi Muslim community who support the endeavours of Gaza, of what is going on, and are hostile to the actions of the Israeli government, but feel that they shouldn't have these flags on streets. I thought, if you walk down some of the streets, it doesn't look like a London borough. It looks almost like what you would imagine in Ceausescu's Romania, with flags on every street lamp.
Well, Peter, can you let us know what it's like in the council and their activities in Tower Hamlets? How much time, for example, has been spent discussing issues relating to what's happening in the Middle East? Has it dominated quite a lot of time?
No. Let's be absolutely fair to the mayor and the administration. There's a heck of a lot to do in this council. We have extremes of deprivation and, of course, wealth because of the Canary Wharf City Fringe. We have huge problems on the council. And to be fair, the council spends its time doing council matters. And they said initially, in fact, absolutely carefully at council meetings, we can't interfere with foreign policy, but we got a lot to do on national policy and local policy. Let's concentrate on that.
So there hasn't been too much pressure that you can see from people living in the borough for the council to take a stance?
Members of the council and the administration have put their support. As I've said, we're talking of free speech. They're entitled to do that, but it's what happens where the council is responding to absolutely everybody, all 320,000 people who live in our borough.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. Now, ITV is in the news after a commissioner allegedly told industry executives that the broadcaster does not want white men, in quotes, on screen as talent.
Yeah, well, I'm stuffed. We're joined now by our reporter, Charlie Peters. Charlie, what's been going on?
So we broke the story last night. It refers to an event that happened 2 days ago, the Broadcast Indie Summit, hosted by Broadcast Magazine, where an ITV commissioner was sat on a panel discussing getting in talent for factual, non-scripted television programmes in that all-important 9 p.m. slot, where she's reported to have said that they don't want white men as talent on the programmes. Now, one of the people in the audience heard this and immediately wrote a complaint to ITV, which we understand is now under review. We haven't been able to listen to a recording of the panel, but we do know that a recording is there, as claimed by the magazine. They won't release any tapes unless they have the consent of all people on the panel. But the complaint is sharp. It goes on to say that this statement was not made as a joke, and she did not seek to clarify her point any further. They also said that on behalf of ITV, this commissioner has briefed people from the broadcast and entertainment industry that they will discriminate against people based on sex and ethnicity when casting talent for television shows on ITV. So a very strong complaint being put in under review at the moment.
OK, Charlie, thank you very much. Well, to talk about this a little bit more, social policy analyst Dr Rakib Ehsan, a very good morning to you. Now, as Charlie was saying there, we don't have a recording of this. We don't absolutely know the context. But what are your thoughts here?
Well, firstly, Pip, these alleged remarks, they seem to be a common occurrence. And previously I've talked about DEI policy, how it's anything but progressive and inclusive. It's increasingly deeply exclusionary, especially towards white males. We've seen the Royal Air Force get itself in a right tangle when it comes to indulging in unlawful activity through its ethnic minority recruitment drives. So I'm very concerned as well that these comments were allegedly made in a professional forum. This wasn't some kind of leaked email. It's quite remarkable that people who are in very influential positions are willing to speak in such a way openly.
Yeah, Rakib, you mentioned the RAF. I mean, when you hear stories like this, personally, I'm never surprised anymore because we hear it so often, when in actual fact, the RAF had to apologise last year for reverse racism against white people. And isn't it a sad state of affairs that when I heard this story, it wasn't much of a shock because it's become such a norm that white people, particularly straight white men even, are the brunt of most, a lot of discrimination now in this country. It's a sad state of affairs, isn't it?
No, absolutely. And that irrational hostility towards white British males has become normalised in our public institutions, but also the private sector. And I think that this particular case, for me, I think that when it comes to television and casting, like all other sectors, we need to prioritise meritocracy. It needs to be about ultimately bringing in the most talented people, irrespective of their racial background and indeed their sex. And I think it's important to make the point that the terms such as reverse racism that you use there, Ben, I don't believe in reverse racism. I think it's simply racism, much like positive discrimination. It's quite an extraordinary oxymoron. Discrimination is discrimination, irrespective of whether the person who's being targeted has an ethnic minority background or belongs to the white British mainstream.
When you look at the talent pool across ITV, though, it is actually full of white men. I mean, I know ITV has got a big diversity policy. They've spent millions on all this, but actually they don't seem to employ a lot of black or Asian men.
Well, I think that what's quite interesting is many of these institutions which are supposedly committed to diversity, equality and inclusion, who often hoist themselves by their own identitarian petard, including The Guardian, where you had ethnic minority workers there recently accusing The Guardian of not being particularly sensitive to their own grievances and concerns. So perhaps organisations should set an example. But the point is, Pip, is that I don't want this to be a forced process. You can talk about maybe engaging with communities where there may be untapped potential. But when it comes to excluding entire groups based on race and gender, that's something that I would never possibly support.
Thank you, Dr. Rakib. Appreciate that. In reply, ITV have said the panel discussion included ways to pitch new ideas and ways to further diversify content and talent offerings. We aim to create and showcase content with, and for everyone. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Kemi Badenoch yesterday said that DEI is actually counterproductive, let alone promoting equality. But stick with us. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Big hour coming up. Here's your weather.
Time is ticking on your chance to win the Great British Giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner, just like Phil.
Didn't quite believe it and still can't. And if I can win it, anybody can win it.
For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats, and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GB-WIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
The Victoria and Albert Museum in London has been accused of calling the former Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher a villain.
The caption read, "Over the years, the evil character in this seaside puppet show has shifted from the devil, which it was originally apparently, to unpopular public figures, including Adolf Hitler, Osama bin Laden and Margaret Thatcher."
Well, let's talk to political commentator and housing expert Russell Quirk and former miner David Craddock. Good to see you both this morning. Russell, what do you think?
No, of course not. She's probably one of the two best prime ministers that this country's ever had, alongside Winston Churchill. She was a woman of conviction, of proper ideology, and she literally pulled Britain up by its bootstraps. So, no, she's a hero.
How do you balance that out against the idea that she did, as Russell said, pull Britain up by the bootstraps? We were the sick man of Europe.
We were the sick man of Europe, as Russell says, but her methods were not the means of getting us out of trouble. All she did was turned finance towards the private pocket rather than to services. And as a result, Britain suffered in the long term.
It's interesting that you bring that up, though, because a lot of people do look at the sort of perilous state our politics is in at the moment, and they quote people like Margaret Thatcher. They say, if only we had people who were a bit more like Margaret Thatcher, we wouldn't be in the trouble we're in now.
It's just unfortunate she's not around now, because I think she put current politicians to shame, don't you?
Yeah, but the reality with this, Russell, to do that, she was quite happy to break a lot of eggs. And she did that without a lot of remorse.
Good morning, great to have you with us. It is 10 a.m. on Friday, the 22nd of March. You are with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Ben Leo and Pip Thompson.
Own goal for Nike. The American sportswear brand has been slammed for changing the St George's cross on the new England football kit. So is it ever OK to tamper with the national flag? And does the president of the FA, Prince William, need to step in?
Do civil servants deserve a pay rise? MPs are warning that their morale is being brought down by chronic pay issues.
And sickness benefits surge. The cost of those out of work will increase by more than a third by the end of the decade. Do we need to get tough on those out of work?
Small boat spike. Favourable weather this week sees the highest number of small boat crossings so far this year. Remember that pledge by the government to stop the boats?
And of course, let us know your views on all the topics we're discussing this morning, not least that England shirt. Pip, are you for or against it? What do you reckon?
I'm against it, but I also think, for me, the anger is down to the price as well. Expecting, if you've got a family of four, what would they be paying?
Well,
four shirts?
In excess of 500 quid if you want to get
crazy.
a shirt for everybody. And also ITV, not keen on hiring white talent. Do you agree? Have we got too many talented white stars on our TV networks? Of course, Bradley Walsh, Anton Deck, Jeremy Clarkson, some of the biggest ITV stars, and they're white. Is it an own goal for ITV, whose share price, by the way, is in the gutter over the past 7 or 8 years?
GB Views at gbnews.com. We will be reading out your thoughts very soon, straight after your news with Sam Francis.
Pip, Ben, thank you very much. Good morning from the newsroom. It's just gone 10 o'clock and leading the news this morning. Sir Geoffrey Cox says that Labour's projected landslide at the next general election could, he says, annihilate a credible opposition. The former Attorney-General is warning that a possible win for Sir Keir Starmer would leave the Conservatives without a front bench and called it a very dangerous thing for democracy. In a GB News exclusive, the Conservative MP said that Rishi Sunak is a serious administrator, but suggested the Prime Minister needs to reveal more of himself to sway voters.
100-seat majority, 80-seat majority is big, but the proposal at the moment, the suggestion that Labour might win a 200-seat majority effectively annihilates any credible opposition. That's bad for democracy. But on our part, we need to show why.
The Home Secretary has vowed to crack down on spiking by updating the law to hold, he says, perpetrators to account. Legislation in England and Wales is being changed to make it clear that it's a crime. The most recent figures show more than 560 spiking offences are reported every month, involving food, drink, needles and modified vapes. Campaigners say the true number of victims could be even higher.
We know that with the drugs that are prevalent in spiking, that speed is of the essence. And of course what we're doing is we're updating the legislation to make it clear and unambiguous that spiking is a crime. We prioritise the prevention of crimes against women and girls, and the people who perpetrate spiking will be held to account.
Sir Keir Starmer has backed calls for Nike to scrap its New England football kit after redesigning the St George's cross. It comes after the brand had ditched the traditional red and white cross on the collar and replaced it with blue and purple stripes. The company says the change was a playful update ahead of Euro 2024, but critics, including the Labour leader, have said the alteration undermines the unifying symbol. Sir Keir Starmer's also claimed that the price of £125 for the shirts should be reduced. Well, we've heard in the last hour or so that police in West Yorkshire are now investigating alleged racist comments made in 2019 by the Conservative Party's biggest donor. The Metropolitan Police have transferred the case because Frank Hester's comments are reported to have been made in Leeds. In their jurisdiction, officers there say that they are now looking at whether a crime was committed in 2019 during that alleged meeting. The businessman, who's already given the party £10 million, is accused of saying that the MP Diane Abbott made him want to hate all black women. The funeral of 15-year-old Mason Rist is being held later in Bristol, where he was stabbed to death in January, alongside his best friend Max Dixon, who was also laid to rest yesterday. A total of 12 people were arrested in connection with their deaths, and 5 people have been charged with their murder. The partner of Max's mother is taking part in a charity walk between Weston-super-Mare's Grand Pier and Bristol to raise funds in their memory. A man described as a loner will be sentenced later for the murder of a couple he was working for by poisoning them with the opioid fentanyl. Luke DeWitt invented fake personas and rewrote the wills of Stephen and Carol Baxter, who were in their 60s, to take charge of their company. A jury found that the 34-year-old from Essex was guilty on Wednesday. A man who was caught up in the Westminster Bridge terror attack says the Prime Minister's response to his campaign has been abysmal. Today marks 7 years since the incident near the Houses of Parliament. Travis Frayne has been pushing for a so-called survivors' charter to improve support for people that are impacted by terrorism. 6 people died, including the attacker, and more than 50 were injured in the attack in 2017. Mouth cancer could soon be diagnosed painlessly with the help of flavoured lollipops. Traditional methods involve invasive procedures like biopsies. However, researchers say their quicker and kinder alternative could be used in GP surgeries. Made from smart hydrogel, the lollies capture proteins in a patient's saliva. With funding from Cancer Research UK, scientists are hoping the project could see patients freed from painful procedures and mean earlier detection. Consumer experts are saying that Scottish Power, OVO Energy and British Gas must urgently improve their customer service. A survey by Which has found customers are often left on hold or stuck in never-ending loops with chatbots with no answers to their questions. The companies insist they are, though, working to improve. And funding has been announced for nearly 1,000 new electric buses in England. 25 councils are to get a share of £143 million, with rural areas prioritised. The Department for Transport is claiming the vehicles, to be fitted with Wi-Fi and USB charging points, will be zero emission to help improve local air quality. Those are the headlines. More in the next half an hour. In the meantime, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, though, it's back to Pip and Ben.
Thanks, Sam. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. I want to bring you this breaking news about West Yorkshire Police investigating alleged racist comments made by Tory party donor Frank Hester about Diane Abbott at a meeting in 2019. Olivia Utley, our political correspondent, I think can join us now. Olivia, interesting this because the government has kind of tried to get past this now. I think it was Kemi Badenoch that described it all as trivia. Well, it's very much back in the news today if police are investigating the comments.
Well, absolutely. Rishi Sunak was very much hoping that he had put this whole saga behind him. As you'll probably remember, when it first broke that Frank Hester had made these comments back in 2019, Rishi Sunak and his ministers avoided saying that he had used racist language for quite a few days. There was a lot of heat on the government. There was a lot of people saying that they should admit that the comments from this donor had been racist. Finally, Kemi Badenoch, a cabinet minister, did say the remarks were racist, and the rest of the cabinet followed suit. But that wasn't really the end of the issue because, of course, Frank Hester donated £10 million to the Conservative Party, and there are rumours that there is another £5 million in the pipeline. So far, Rishi Sunak and the rest of his cabinet have stopped short of saying that they are going to hand that money back. But with the latest news that this matter has now been handed over to West Yorkshire Police, the spotlight will be on the government yet again, and the Conservative Party too, to hand back that money. Will they give in to pressure this time round? And what point will they do it? Because last time this issue erupted, Rishi Sunak got a lot of criticism for not acting faster. Might he feel that now is the moment to show decisiveness and do something quickly before he's pulled through the quagmire about this again?
Olivia, any idea how long this police attention on Frank Hester will take? Will it be dragged out over the course of the year and potentially into the election as well?
Well, it's quite possible that it will be dragged out. I mean, the West Yorkshire Police are giving us no timeline at the moment. They say that they have only just been alerted to the issue. The matter was passed on from the Metropolitan Police to West Yorkshire Police. But from experience, you know, police matters like this aren't cleared up particularly quickly. It probably won't be a top priority for West Yorkshire Police. So it is quite possible that it continues to drag out over the course of this election year, making life difficult for Rishi Sunak.
Absolutely. Olivia Utley, political correspondent, thank you for bringing us the breaking news on that. Let's go back to all this discussion and debate about Nike changing the St George's Cross colour on the England shirt. Sir Keir Starmer has called on Nike to change it. What do you think? Plenty of thoughts, Ben.
Yes, Barry says, leave our English flag alone. We don't celebrate St George's Day because of offending people. And Ruby says, England fans should boycott the football shirt and don't buy it. Shame on the FA that authorised it.
Hey, you'd save yourself a bit of money as well. 125 quid for an adult shirt. Linda, the English shirt is another tradition that is trying to stamp out the British existence. What nationality was the person that tried to erase the English flag? Which other flag in the world has been changed? And Mark, good morning. It's ridiculous to change the colours in any national flag. Imagine the French doing that on the tricolour.
Would never happen.
Good point.
Would never happen. Let's bring in Ben Everett, Conservative MP for Milton Keynes North. Good morning to you, Ben. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Ben.
You are, surprisingly, as a Conservative, on the other side of the fence compared to Sir Keir Starmer and even Emily Thornberry this morning. You don't think there's a problem with this, do you?
No, who told you that? No, I think it's bonkers. I think it's not the biggest political issue in the world, is it? But I mean, why mess with the flag? And the reasoning that they've put behind it, as well as, you know, the historical references, 1966 training kit, and all that kind of stuff. You can sort out historical references on a kit without messing with the flag. And I think one of your callers or one of your viewers just then absolutely nailed it. What other country in the world would accept this with you know, messing about with the national flag, the national identity? It's a fairly simple thing. Just leave it alone.
And I think Lynn as well. She says, is this playful change, in quotes, of St George's flag by Nike, another stage towards a rainbow flag. I mean, this is the point. Some people initially might think, well, what's all the fuss about it? It's very small, it's on the back of the shirt. But actually, once you start doing this, where could it end?
Well, quite. I mean, I probably wouldn't follow the threads on that kind of theory. For me, it's just a matter of simplicity. You know, there's plenty of ways to show our appreciation for the efforts of the 1966 team to be playful. But if you want to be playful, don't be playful with the flag.
Have you spoken to the Prime Minister this morning or any cabinet members about this? What's their thoughts?
Do you know what? I haven't actually. I caught a tweet from the main party account saying there's only one St George's flag, which I think is it absolutely nails it. That's we don't need detailed discussion on this one, do we? We just need Nike to do one and mess with somebody else's flag.
What about Prince William as president of the FA? Should he wade into this and come out with any sort of statement? Because he might be listened to.
I tell you what, if I was doing Nike's public affairs and the phone buzzed and it's Prince William, I'd probably change it back.
Ben, do you get the feeling that actually people like the FA and Nike don't give a damn about English football fans? Because we've had Nike supporting Black Lives Matter, which on the surface is a great cause. Of course, you want equality for all races, but actually BLM is all about anti-capitalist, anti-police, anti-Western society. Then we had the taking the knee from the England team. Then we had Harry Kane's rainbow armband, which caused a lot of controversy at the World Cup. Gareth Southgate indicating that England fans who weren't happy with it there was something bigoted about them. And now we've got this situation where you wouldn't find any other nation having their flag tampered with like this. Why is it always England and England fans that are the doormat for this kind of agenda?
Yeah, Ben, you've nailed it. I mean, it is. We need to put fans front and centre of football, and in many ways, the story is quite live politically, because last week we brought in the independent football regulator, and one of the real purposes of the legislation that we've laid down is to put fans at the heart of decision making, so that when big decisions about their clubs are made, fans get a say. Now, there's plenty of other great stuff in there about supporting the football pyramid, making the finances fairer, making sure that the owners of clubs are fit and proper and everything. My colleagues have worked really hard on that. Tracy Crouch, Sarah Brickcliffe, they've all worked really hard to get this through. But the thing that highlights this is you wouldn't have thought that a shirt design would be so intrinsic to the direction of this, but this is where we are, you know, and we need to put fans front and centre of football. But it happens this week. This is what we're doing with the legislation.
But Ben, we're putting fans front and centre. It's not putting fans front and centre when you're expecting them to pay £124.99 for one of these blooming shirts.
That's insane. I mean, you'd want the shirt to actually score the goals for you at that price. It's utterly nuts.
OK, Conservative MP for Milton Keynes North, Ben Everett, thank you very much. Actually, do you know what? I don't think Nike or the FA give a damn about football fans. They sell these shirts for £125 a pop. Obscene amounts of money. They're made in places like Thailand, in sweatshops where the workers... There was an investigation in the Mirror a couple of years back from the World Cup where they get paid £1 an hour to make these £150 shirts. They keep most of the proceeds themselves, and they expect England fans and football fans to put up with it every year, coming back to buy more shirts, buying more shirts for their kids. And today, for the Euros, desecrating the St George's flag. They don't care. They don't care about England fans. They're, of course, not here
Nike, they're not here to challenge you on that. They would say they do. Of course they do. But as Chaz says, what is Nike, an American company, doing designing our English shirt? And if that was a plan to do that, why not put it out to some sort of consultation? Why didn't the FA do some sort of consultation?
Nothing's sacred, and even Lee Anderson hinted at it, that it's, you know, as an isolated incident, fine, you can maybe let it pass, but it's a gradual nudge and a push on what he said was the erasure of English culture. You saw it with hot cross buns.
Oh, let's not get started on hot cross buns.
They've taken the Christian design of the hot cross bun and put a tick on it, which actually looks like a Nike tick.
Yeah, let's not even get started on that.
We'll get stuck into
if you
that
know
later.
about this story, let us know what you think about it. gbviews@gbnews.com. Still to come, we're going to be telling you more about the Labour MP, Fiona Wilson.
Who?
Exactly. Not sure. Well, some of you say you've heard of her, but how can you heard of her? Because I'm not even sure she exists. We'll explain more very shortly. First, here's your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, good morning. Welcome to the GB News forecast from the Met Office. It is a damp start out there in the south, a lot of cloud as well, but it does turn brighter from the north, albeit with a cold wind arriving by the end of the day. Here's the extent of the cloud and rain through the morning across East Anglia, the south and southeast of England. Eventually the rain becomes confined to London and the far southeast by the afternoon. Brighter skies arrive from the north and northwest, but with a cold wind and frequent showers already packing in across Scotland, Northern Ireland, arriving into northern England, parts of Wales and the Midlands later. It's going to feel cold wherever you are, though, with that wind coming in from the Arctic, and temperatures will feel more like the mid to high single figures than 11 or 12 Celsius. The wind gets even stronger on Friday night with the risk of gales for the far north of Scotland, frequent downpours, and it's cold enough for those showers to be falling as snow over the tops of the Pennines and the Scottish mountains. A touch of frost possible overnight, but because of the blustery air, well, it's not going to be widespread, just sheltered spots really, waking up to -1 or -2 Celsius. Nevertheless, could affect gardens across the land. Now, into Saturday morning, we're going to see further showers arriving, initially in the north and the west, but just about anywhere by the afternoon could be prone to those downpours. They'll be heavy at times, but they'll be interspersed by some brighter interludes. However, it will continue to feel cold in that wind.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, what's going on in Scotland? So they're implementing these draconian hate speech laws, which are going to come into force on April the 1st, I kid you not.
Ironically, yeah.
And then, basically, you can go to your local mushroom shop or whatever.
Which I didn't know we had mushrooms farms in Scotland because people aren't that keen on vegetables up the road. Not even a shiitake.
But you can report a hate crime at these private places, but you can do it anonymously, and then the police will, I don't know, unleash the hate monster. I don't know how this works. What's going on?
I think the hate monster is mythical,
yes.
And I don't think the hate monster actually exists. What I do think is I'm genuinely really worried about comedy, right?
Yeah.
Now, believe it or not, some people in Scotland, they're wrong, but they don't like me.
Yeah.
And I genuinely feel that a lot of time is going to be wasted. You know, if someone calls you a name in a shop, you probably deserved it, believe me.
Also, comedy can be quite offensive, particularly yours.
And I'm not necessarily sure, as I've said on the show before, I remember my mum was worried when Scotland had decided that all residential properties needed special smoke alarms, and my mum was convinced this was to do with the hate crime and that there was a camera in them.
I don't think she's being that paranoid. I mean, Scotland is a kind of nanny state. You know, actually, Humza Yousaf, when he implemented the hate crime bill, put a subsection in that which said that they can criminalise you for things you've said in the privacy of your own home. Thankfully, Scotland doesn't have the largest arts festival in the world. Oh, wait, no, it does. It does. It actually does have that. And lots of comedians are up there. Now, we had this before, because if you go back about to 2003, when New Labour were trying to push through their racial and religious hate crime bill, the comedians are silent now. Something has completely changed. There's been a gear shift. I mean, in the Irish hate crime bill, which is going through at the moment, they actually define hatred as hatred.
Brilliant.
It's a complete circular definition.
Yeah, absolutely. And that tells me when something's woolly, that tells me that it's not going to be applied fairly. It's going to be applied according to the person applying it.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back and good morning to you. It's 10:22. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Ben Leo, and Pip Thompson.
We're joined this morning by Amy Nicole-Turner and Emma Webb in the studio. A very good morning to you both. Emma, let's start with this story about Fiona Wilson, a Labour MP, which lots of people think they've heard of. Which would be fine if she actually existed.
This is an absolutely hilarious story. So some polling by Times Radio into people's recognition and ratings of ministers has put in a fake name, fake Labour shadow minister, who actually had higher recognition than some of the Labour Party's more media sort of media savvy. They appear on the media quite often. So the people that you would think would be most known by the public. And actually this fake Labour minister came out as having more recognition.
Isn't a real MP.
No, I mean it's fascinating because I think it's. Amy mentioned this before we were on air that maybe it's because Wilson is a name that is associated in people's minds with politics. Yeah. It'd be interesting to sort of have a psychologist explain why this might be the case. But I think it's suggestive of the overall disengagement that people are experiencing with politics over the last 5 or so years. People feeling very disenchanted. But it's fascinating that people would think that they recognised a minister who actually doesn't exist.
Or is it that, you know, Labour wheels out always the same faces to do the media interviews, the good performers like...
No, because one of the names on the list was Tangan Debonair, who was doing loads of press last week. But I think this speaks to the fact that when we're here, we forget how few people are actually interested or engaged in politics. I think it's actually like 10% of the population who consider themselves interested and into any politics at all. We don't teach politics properly to children in schools. I think there really is like this Westminster bubble, and people just aren't interested in learning about it because they feel like it's nothing like more people know Andrew Tate than know Rishi Sunak.
Well, in a certain age bracket, I think you're right.
And it may have something also to do with disengagement with mainstream media. So a lot of these Labour ministers will likely be appearing on... They're doing the media rounds on mainstream media. That's what's so interesting that... So in this polling, 15% of respondents were favourable towards this fake shadow minister, which was higher than a number of these other ministers that are listed here, Jonathan Reynolds, Bridget Phillipson, who do the media rounds often. So maybe it's that people are watching alternative media and they're just not exposed to it.
They did do this with the Conservative cabinet as well, asking for views on a fictional minister called Henry Thorpe, and he ended up being better known than Claire Coutinho, the Energy Secretary.
And this fake Henry Thorpe also had a net favourability of -5, putting him in the top tier of real Tory ministers, according to this polling.
The whole Tory psychodrama we had over the weekend when people were throwing all these names around as if the public really care, when actually nobody actually cares the names that are being chucked. They just don't like the Conservative Party. It is their feelings about the party rather than the individuals. So if you said to an ordinary person on the street the name Penny Mordaunt, Tom Tugendhat, I wouldn't be surprised if most of them didn't have a clue who you were talking about.
They know Penny Mordaunt was
from Holding the Sword.
Yeah.
Exactly. This is how people get these names. Or Dominic Cummings. Isn't he the one that threw the tomato? Oh no, that is Dominic Raab, who threw, they get these reputations. Or poor Andrea Jenkins, who I adore, actually, and who gets known as the one that stuck a finger up to the paparazzi. So they get known for these rather tabloid things rather than their actual work.
Is there an argument that maybe politicians need to be a bit flexible when it comes to getting their message out? For example, Nigel Farage, he's massive on TikTok, and up until a couple of years ago, he wasn't aware of the reach that TikTok had. He's banging on it all the time now, putting videos out. His reach and his audience on there is massive, and he seems to be one of the very few politicians to actually be encompassing that TikTok space at the moment.
You're actually, you're bang on with that. And especially since he went on the very mainstream, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. I expect so many more people, because what do we love in this country? We love celebrities. We love that side of things. And I actually think that gets us in danger sometimes, because sometimes when we are too attracted to personality, we end up with people like Boris Johnson in charge, because people are like, oh, I'd go for a pint with him down the pub. And that speaks more to people than actual policy.
Just because you like their videos.
But I think they do. I think they would.
It's also got to be something to do with the fact that we don't really, with the exception of people like Boris Johnson, in politics we don't. It's a combination of things. I think we don't really have the charismatic potential leaders in either main party. But at the same time, I think you've also seen this trend towards Westminster becoming very focused on itself. So a lot of the Westminster news is very Westminster bubble. It's all of these names and scandals and so on. And people have, I think, have slowly disengaged from that, anecdotally. And I think the combination of the kind of lack of personality and also the over-interest of politicians in themselves rather than communicating the important messages to the public could be part of the reason for this.
It will be interesting to see what the turnout is like at the general election.
I think
this summer or this autumn.
I think it'll be very low, but I think you need personality and character. You know, I want to see from Keir Starmer, Rishi Sunak as well. I want to know about them. I want to know who's going to be running the country. I don't want to know just about their policies and all the time.
But you also want to know them as politicians. I think people like Matt Hancock is a good example of this, who almost want to be known as celebrities. And it's an old cliche that politics is show business for ugly people. But you want them to be, the old figures, people like Tony Benn, who I'm no fan of, but he was a man with charisma and standing, and he was known as a politician. And I'm sure that in 10 years ago or earlier than that, that you wouldn't have had this issue with recognition.
Sir Keir Starmer's trying to do it today, isn't he, to an extent, with this podcast with The Sun, answering or not answering questions about, what his favourite alcohol is, how many sexual partners he's had.
It's not what we need to know.
he was asked the last time he took drugs, which he's previously admitted was in his student days. And actually, the way he described it, he said, I had fun in my student days. So he's actually saying doing drugs is fun, which I found quite...
I don't think anybody's really paying attention to that particular podcast, though, because didn't it get...
Well, it's The Sun. What, The Sun?
It didn't... People are not interested in any interviews with politicians. What people are interested in at the moment is looking at their bills at the end of the month and not being able to afford them. And they don't care what name is on... what hat is on top. They just want to vote for a party that's going to change that.
But don't you think that those kinds of podcasts where they're being asked these sort of banal, irrelevant questions are actually what turn people off? That's actually one of the reasons for disengagement, is that so many politicians in senior positions in both parties come across as so unserious. And when we are facing a crisis, I mean, one of the other stories today is about council tax rises. We are facing serious problems as a country, but we're being presented with these very, very unserious figures because I think it's almost like they're trying to get down with the kids. They're misunderstanding how they need to communicate with the public.
If you've got a drugs minister who is making... as an example from what we were just talking about, if you've got a drugs minister making policy on drugs, surely if they've had an experience of using drugs, they're going to be more informed about putting forward policy and legislation. So I disagree with you on that.
I think the reason they talk about stuff like that is because we don't have the political literacy in this country that we should have, really. So if we brought that in earlier to schools, then we could have better conversations as adults.
Thank you, ladies. For now, we'll see you again very shortly. But now you're going to see Sam Francis, who has your headlines.
Pip, thank you very much. 10:31, I'm Sam Francis. In the newsroom, the top story this morning. Sir Geoffrey Cox has warned that Labour's projected landslide at the next general election could annihilate a credible opposition. The former Attorney-General says a win for Sir Keir Starmer would leave the Conservatives without a front bench, calling it a very dangerous thing for democracy. In a GB News exclusive, the MP added that Rishi Sunak is a serious administrator, but he suggested the Prime Minister should reveal more of himself to win voters. Legislation in England and Wales is being updated to crack down on spiking to make it clear that it's a crime. The most recent figures show more than 560 spiking offences are reported every month, involving food, drink, needles and modified vapes. Campaigners say the true number of victims could be even higher. However, the Home Secretary says that the updated law will hold perpetrators to account. A man that's been described as a loner will be sentenced later for the murder of a couple that he worked for by poisoning them with fentanyl. Luke DeWitt invented fake personas, including a solicitor, and rewrote the wills of Stephen and Carol Baxter, who were in their 60s at the time, to take charge of their company. A jury found the 34-year-old from Essex was guilty on Wednesday. The SNP's Westminster leader is expected to tell the Plaid Cymru Spring Conference that they, along with his party, must break up the cosy Westminster consensus. The two parties share similar political outlooks in several areas and they're seeking separate independence referendums. Stephen Flynn will criticise Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer, calling him an active fanboy for the new Thatcherism. The Culture Secretary has now joined calls for Nike to change the colour of the St George's Cross on its New England football shirt after a row over its design. In a post in the last hour on social media, Lucy Fraser has said that the multicoloured design is pointless and unnecessary, adding that it's not what fans want. It follows similar comments from the Labour leader, who says the sports brand should revert to the original flag's colours. The company, though, says the change was a playful update ahead of the Euro 2024 tournament in June. And offenders in England and Wales will be tasked with cleaning up vandalism in a bid to swiftly tackle antisocial behaviour. The Ministry of Justice says teams of people serving community sentences will scrub graffiti and collect litter within just 48 hours of cases being reported. The move comes as main political parties ramp up their commitments on law and order ahead of the upcoming general election. Those are the headlines. More to come with Pip and Ben, but in the meantime, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the QR code there on your screen. Or if you're listening on radio, go to gbnews.com/alerts.
For stunning gold and silver coins you'll always value, Rosland Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a look at the markets this morning. The pound will buy you $1.2578 and €1.1627. The price of gold is currently £1,722.14. That's per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is 7,959 points.
Rosland Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Right, Flaggate's still raging. The Culture Secretary says, sort it out. What are you doing? We're going to hear from Rishi Sunak next to see what he has to say. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Ben Leo and Pip Thompson.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
Is a debate on gender really a far-right issue?
Far right. I'm so bored of that phrase, you know what I mean? Like, anyone who talks about... anyone who acknowledges that there are two sexes is suddenly far right, because that's what Hitler and Mussolini were all about. This question from Shirley is, of course, about Labour. They've been accused of being undemocratic because they pressured a pub into cancelling a debate, and this debate features Kelly J. Keane, who's been on this show a couple of times, and she's a campaigner, and she was just on the panel, and then they got a letter saying that they couldn't do it because Kelly J. Keane apparently attracts far-right groups. Now, they've tried this trick before, but because some awful, ghastly neo-Nazi types turned up near to an event that she was holding in Australia, they kind of tried to blame that on her and suggest that the two were the same thing. They weren't. That was an opportunistic group turning up to... they're not... Neo-Nazis aren't pro-feminist. They're not pro an event called Let Women Speak. That's just ridiculous.
New Zealand's TV blurred her
her touching her zip because they said that her touching her zip was a far-right dog whistle because she's making that symbol.
Yeah, but she wasn't making the symbol, she was just adjusting a zip.
Yeah, and also, this isn't a far-right symbol.
I mean, that was incredible because she obviously wasn't making that symbol anyway. She was just adjusting a top. But this New Zealand news channel blurred out the hand so that they could pretend that it was some horrible ghastly... I mean, this is stuff, isn't it?
She's talked about having voted Labour in the past. She's so not far right.
But also,
I mean,
even if she were right-wing, which she isn't, why would they be banning a panel where there's a discussion about one of the most important issues of our day? What are Labour playing at here?
They're anti-democratic, aren't they? They're just kind of playing whack-a-mole with things they don't like. I think maybe I'll write to the pub and say I do want to see Kelly J. Keane there.
Yeah, but they won't listen to you
well,
if you
no,
say
they
that,
won't,
will they?
they
Because
won't.
you've got the unfashionable opinion, Chris.
Well, and the unfashionable workplace.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQs Live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, we've been talking about British culture, haven't we? So how would you fancy a landmark, a tribute to a World War II bomber, the Lancaster, near you? A charity is desperately trying to find the money to complete a tribute, or what it calls a landmark, to the Lancaster bombers. It needs to raise £80,000 before it can finish the job, and it'll be taller than the Angel of the North.
The Angel of the North is striking. If you ever drive down that A road past it. Well, the local council and the government haven't provided any funding yet. We've got the full story now from our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis.
The plane that took the fight to Germany.
It's a Lancaster, the mightiest aerial engine of destruction ever conceived and built.
Now a charity in Lincolnshire is building a permanent landmark to remember the aircraft's vital role in winning the campaign against Nazi Germany. At Timmins Engineering near Lincoln, the frame is forming. Ken Sadler is chair of the Bomber County Gateway Trust.
When you talk about Lincolnshire, it's inextricably linked to the RAF, and arguably the Lancaster defended the freedom that we all enjoy today.
Most of the 7,000 Lancasters built were stationed in the county with their crew. Today, Britain's only flying Lancaster is based here too at RAF Coningsby.
The Lancaster landmark will weigh around 92 tonnes when it's finished. That's 6 times heavier than the real one. And when it's in place, it will be taller than the Angel of the North.
But building it isn't cheap. Dave Starling's firm Timmins is working for free. Both his grandparents were in the RAF.
It's nice to be able to do it and to honour the Lancaster. It's such a statement piece for Lincolnshire. You know, we are Bomber County and we're proud of it.
The pace of the £1 million project has dropped as the price of materials like steel rises. The charity has already raised £200,000, mainly from public donations, but needs another £80,000 to finish the job.
We've actually been gifted the steel for these ribs, which again is about £20,000, but we need some cash now to pay for the labour to fabricate them.
Soon the Lancaster will be lifted onto a frame at Charlie White's farm, on a hillside overlooking the border with Nottinghamshire, to be seen by 34,000 drivers every day.
They're going to look up and see this landmark on the side of a hill in Lincolnshire and think what an amazing tribute to the counties.
Although designed as a heritage landmark, the charity understands how meaningful the Lancaster will be to those who remember lives lost.
Hopefully this will just remind people of the sacrifice and the values that we hold dear and should hold dear.
The Trust hopes to complete the structure in 2025. The cost exceeds many thousands of pounds, but a far greater price has already been paid.
Yes, they did a grand job, all right.
Will Hollis, GB News in Lincolnshire.
All right, so the project cost $1 million. They only need 80k, which in the grand scheme of things isn't that much. So we're joined now by former Chief of Staff at the RAF, Sir Michael Braden. Sir Michael, good morning. Thank you for joining us. We can find £1 million for a Muslim war memorial in the budget, but these guys can't gather 80k from the government to finish this, rather fitting tribute to a very important piece of our aviation history.
Yes, there are a lot of memorials around the country, and I've no doubt that each one of them feels that they have a particular grab on available money. And I'm delighted to see that progress has been made to finish off the Lancaster. It will be a tremendous gateway into the county. But I think we just need to remember that you'll see it, you'll pass it, and I hope that people will think, gosh, yes, wonderful remembrance of what happened in World War II and Bomber County. But I hope they'll also do a bit more than that, because we have the International Bomber Command Centre in Lincolnshire, and I declare an interest. I'm the chairman of it. And it's been doing the most wonderful work to continue that remembrance, to continue that recognition of the sacrifice made by nearly 58,000 men and women in Bomber Command in World War II.
And do you feel that more of these monuments, these landmarks are needed? Because as the veterans pass away, as the years go on, more and more people maybe feel more distant from it. And they shouldn't feel like that, but it feels like way back when.
I think you need more than just memorials. There are an awful lot of memorials in London. And if you walk past them, sometimes you don't even notice they're there. I think this one, the Lancaster, will stand out. It's a fine gateway into the county. But I would plead that people do a bit more than just pass it, to think about it, and go and see. Now, the International Bomber Command Centre, you will find the records of every single person that served in Bomber Command. You will be able to trace their story. You will see their names of all of those who died on the walls around the memorial. In other words, you'll have a follow-through. It will be much more important for them to remember that way than just passing a memorial. So I think Lincolnshire can be very proud of what's going on and the remembrance of being applied to Bomber Command in World War II, the Lancaster, we have East Kirkby, we have a number of airfields, but we have the International Bomber Command Centre, which keeps it alive daily. And I think that's very important. Over 100,000 visitors last year, 500,000 since it opened, and school children coming, 25,000 school children have been through. Now that is the way to remember, it seems to me, in the future.
What would you say to people who are looking to donate this morning? I mean, we've actually, I should read out this email from Chris saying how lovely it has been to see the story being highlighted today. They knew nothing about it, but Chris's dad was a navigator, mostly night run Hamburg. Death rate was 75%. He survived and passed away in 2006. They've gone on the website and this morning they've donated.
That's marvellous, and I'm delighted to see it. It will, as I say, be a gateway to the county. But I do plead that people do a bit more than just pass it. Go and see the International Bomber Command Centre and follow through.
So, Michael, just very, very briefly, when you speak of or hear of World War aviation and our planes, the Spitfire, of course, comes up pretty frequently. But what role exactly did the Lancaster play? Why was it so important, just for those of us who are uneducated?
Well, it was a step change in capability, both in range and bomb carrying capability. It could fly non-stop comfortably to Berlin and back again. And it really opened the eyes of the Americans when they saw what we produced there. They were really amazed. It was a step change, I'd say, an outstanding aircraft. And when you talk to people who flew it, they loved it. You know, it brought you home. If it was possible to get home, you could do that in a Lancaster whilst carrying an enormous bomb load.
OK, former Chief of the Air Staff at the RAF, Sir Michael Graydon, thank you so much for being with us this morning. And if you'd like to help out in raising funds, you can visit www.bombergatewaytrust.co.uk. That's bombergatewaytrust.co.uk, and you can donate there.
Coming next, it is the 15th anniversary of Jade Goody passing away from cervical cancer. She did such great work raising awareness for us women to go and get smear tests. But more recently, that uptake of tests is falling, and we're talking about that next. You're with Britain's Newsroom. Good morning. This is GB News.
Hi there, good morning. Welcome to the GB News forecast from the Met Office. It is a damp start out there in the south, a lot of cloud as well, but it does turn brighter from the north, albeit with a cold wind arriving by the end of the day. Here's the extent of the cloud and rain through the morning across East Anglia, the south and southeast of England. Eventually the rain becomes confined to London and the far southeast by the afternoon. Brighter skies arrive from the north and northwest, but with a cold wind and frequent showers already packing in across Scotland, Northern Ireland, arriving into northern England, parts of Wales and the Midlands later. It's going to feel cold wherever you are, though, with that wind coming in from the Arctic, and temperatures will feel more like the mid to high single figures than 11 or 12 Celsius. The wind gets even stronger on Friday night with the risk of gales for the far north of Scotland, frequent downpours, and it's cold enough for those showers to be falling as snow over the tops of the Pennines and the Scottish mountains. A touch of frost possible overnight, but because of the blustery air, well, it's not going to be widespread, just sheltered spots really, waking up to -1 or -2 Celsius. Nevertheless, could affect gardens across the land. Now, into Saturday morning, we're going to see further showers arriving, initially in the north and the west, but just about anywhere by the afternoon could be prone to those downpours. They'll be heavy at times, but they'll be interspersed by some brighter interludes. However, it will continue to feel cold in that wind.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Ben Leo and Pitt Thompson. It has been, can you believe, 15 years since reality TV star Jade Goody died from cervical cancer, aged just 27.
Yes, but before her death, she made it her mission to raise awareness for the illness, and in doing so, 500,000 more women than usual attended cervical screenings between 2008 and 2009.
Her campaigning is thought to have saved thousands of women's lives. But there is still a long way to go, as according to latest NHS research, 4.6 million Britons still need to be tested urgently.
We're joined now by Hayley Rosendale, who actually, you say, Hayley, that Jade Goody helped you in your life and with your medical situation. Just explain what happened.
Thanks for having me. So I was 29 at the time, and I was kind of the age where the age for smear tests kept getting change. So when I was 18, it got changed to 21. When I was 21, it got changed to 25, and so on. And I never actually went for my test. And I followed it before Jade. It wasn't kind of publicised as much, and I followed her story very closely. I think back in my mind, but I knew I had to go for my test. I followed it a little too closely, and it had got to the point where I was kind of, I think I knew something was wrong. I don't know why. I didn't have any symptoms or anything, but her story just really struck a chord with me, and I got tested. And at the time, so she passed away obviously in the March. I went for my test, and I remember at the time I had to wait about 2 or 3 months for my results because of Jade. A lot of people, which was great, you know, everyone were going for their testing. And I had abnormal cells, and it was actually my first test. And I wasn't overly worried. I didn't have any symptoms or anything. And that's when they found that I had an aggressive tumour.
And you were successfully treated, weren't you, Hayley? I understand you had a hysterectomy and you are now well. Yeah. And I think the thing is about Jade Goody is that she was so young. She still had so much life to live. She was the mum of 2 little boys, Bobby and Freddie. It was absolutely heartbreaking. And from diagnosis to passing away, it was so quick. And yet what we hear is that if it is caught early, survival rates are very good.
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing that people don't realise. The actual smear test isn't a test to detect cancer. It's to detect any abnormalities, to stop it, you know, anything happening. So if I could, I always think to myself, if I could go back and what would I say to my younger self? And it would be, go for your smear test, because it's so easy. It takes minutes, you know. I'd rather that than have to go through. Obviously now I'm kind of, I had my last test last year. And I'm still getting tested now, but, you know, I've had 14, 15 years of hospital appointments, and, you know, it's the after effects of it as well, you know, that I'm kind of left with. Obviously, I can't have my own family, you know, and I was 29 at the time. So that was a big thing as well. But I have it all to Jade to thank for all of it, because she definitely put it all in the public eye.
Very quickly, what would you say to women who get the letter, file it away and go, oh, well, get round to that?
Book your smear test. It literally takes minutes. Honestly, I tell all my friends now, they always say to me, oh, I've booked my test, because they know how serious it is, you know, and it's literally minutes. And as I say, it's not a test to detect cancer. It's to detect any abnormalities that can be caught very early. And we're very lucky to have this service in this country.
Hayley, we'll have to leave it there. We're coming to the end of the hour, but really appreciate you telling everybody, every woman this morning, go and get your smear test. Thanks, Hayley.
Stick with us on GB News. We're back in a tick.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the GB News forecast from the Met Office. We're going to see rain clearing the southeast during the next few hours, followed by sunny spells and showers, but with a cold wind coming from the northwest. We've got low pressure to the north of Scotland, tightly packed isobars, gales in the far north and northwest, and this cold front clears the southeast very slowly, actually, through the rest of the afternoon, just about lingering across parts of Kent, perhaps East Sussex, into the mid-afternoon period. Otherwise, brighter skies follow, some sunny spells, but frequent showers arriving into North Wales, Northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland on that cold wind. So temperatures falling away through the day. In the south, 12 Celsius, in the north, 6 or 7. Now that wind continues to bring showers in overnight, some heavy downpours in places, and the showers will be falling as snow over the hills of Wales, Northern England and Scotland, with some accumulations over the mountains of Scotland. But certainly with that wind, temperatures just staying up at 3 or 4 Celsius in many places, a frost confined to higher parts of the UK. And we start Saturday with some sunshine about, but that chill in the air, and the showers soon get going through the morning. Some heavy downpours with odd rumble of thunder, some hail to lower levels and some snow continuing to build up over the hills of northern UK. And that wind continuing to make it feel cold outside, single figures for most.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's still time to win our giveaway packed with seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won. Cash to make your bank account bloom. Plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 11 a.m. on Friday, March 22nd. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Ben Leo, and Pip Thompson.
Own goal for Nike. The American sportswear brand has been criticised by, well, most people, but including the Conservatives, Labour and Lib Dems for changing the St George's Cross on the new England football kit. Reform MP Lee Anderson, well, he's not impressed.
The England team taking the knee. Then we got the England captain wearing rainbow armbands. Hypocrites, the lot of them. Now we've got this nonsense. Where does it stop? It's a slippery slope. The FA should hang their heads in shame.
What you really think, Lee? Next up, spiking crackdown. The Home Secretary is getting tough on spiking with a new change to the law and wants to provide greater support to spiking victims.
Simpler cars, please. A new poll shows that many drivers want rid of touchscreens on their dashboard and to bring back conventional buttons.
And do civil servants deserve a pay rise? MPs are warning that their morale is being brought down by chronic pay issues.
So plenty to get your teeth into there. Do keep your thoughts coming in. And we haven't even got to the hot cross buns issue. Hot tick buns.
So what are they? They've removed the Christian symbol from the hot cross buns. It's Iceland involved in this, and they've replaced it with a tick, which ironically looks like a Nike tick, all on the same day.
Couldn't make it up. gbviews@gbnews.com. We look forward to hearing from you, and we're also looking forward to hearing from Sam Francis now with your headlines.
Pip, thanks very much. It's just gone 11 o'clock. The headlines this hour. Sir Geoffrey Cox says that Labour's projected landslide at the upcoming general election could, he says, annihilate a credible opposition. The former Attorney-General is warning that a possible win for Sir Keir Starmer would leave the Conservatives without a front bench, calling it a very dangerous thing for democracy. Well, in a GB News exclusive, the MP said that Rishi Sunak is a serious administrator, but suggested the Prime Minister needs to reveal more of himself to sway voters.
100-seat majority, 80-seat majority is big, but the proposal at the moment, the suggestion that Labour might win a 200-seat majority effectively annihilates any credible opposition. That's bad for democracy. But on our part, we need to show why.
The Home Secretary has vowed to crack down on spiking by updating the law to hold, he says, perpetrators to account. Legislation in England and Wales is being changed to make it clear that it's a crime. The most recent figures show more than 560 spiking offences are reported every month, involving food, drink, needles and modified vapes. Campaigners say the true number of victims could be even higher.
We know that with the drugs that are prevalent in spiking, that speed is of the essence. And of course what we're doing is we're updating the legislation to make it clear and unambiguous that spiking is a crime. We prioritise the prevention of crimes against women and girls, and the people who perpetrate spiking will be held to account.
The latest developments now in the story leading the news today that the Culture Secretary has joined calls for Nike to change the colour of the St George's cross on its new England football shirt after a row over its design. In a post on social media this morning, Lucy Fraser said the multicoloured design is pointless and unnecessary, adding that it's not what fans want. It follows similar comments from the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, who says the sports brand should revert to the original flag's colours. The company, though, says the change was a playful update ahead of the Euro 2024 tournament in June. Well, we've been speaking to people outside the Nike store in central London on Oxford Street to get their thoughts. Here's what they had to say.
England is England, you know, you start changing its colours, you start changing the flags. Yeah, it represents something that's traditional and perhaps it should stay that way.
Yes, I like it. I cannot say more, but I think it looks great.
I think it could have been better. I think the old shirts, like retro, I think they could have made them more like them, because I think they're quite good shirts, they're the best.
In other news today, police in West Yorkshire are investigating alleged racist comments made in 2019 by the Conservative Party's biggest donor. The Metropolitan Police have transferred the case because Frank Hester's comments are reported to have been made in Leeds. Officers there say that they are now looking at whether a crime was committed in 2019. The businessman, who's already given the party £10 million, is accused of saying the MP Diane Abbott made him want to hate all black women. The funeral of 15-year-old Mason Rist is being held later. He was stabbed to death in Bristol in January, alongside his best friend Max Dixon, who was also laid to rest this week. A total of 12 people were arrested in connection with their deaths and 5 people have been charged with murder. The partner of Max's mother is taking part in a charity walk between Weston-super-Mare's Grand Pier and Bristol to raise funds in their memory. A man who has been described as a loner will be sentenced later for the murder of a couple that he worked for by poisoning them with the opioid fentanyl. Luke DeWitt invented fake personas and rewrote the wills of Stephen and Carol Baxter, who were in their 60s, to take charge of their company. A jury found the 34-year-old from Essex guilty on Wednesday. A man caught up in the Westminster Bridge terror attacks in 2017 has said that the Prime Minister's response has been abysmal. Today marks 7 years since that incident near the Houses of Parliament. Travis Frayne has been pushing for a so-called survivors' charter to improve support for people who were impacted by terrorism. 6 people died, including the attacker, and more than 50 were injured in that attack in 2017. And consumer experts have said that Scottish Power, OVO Energy and British Gas must urgently improve their customer service. A survey by Which has found customers are often left on hold or stuck in never-ending loops with chatbots with no answers to their questions. The companies, though, insist they are working to make improvements. And finally, 1 in 8 supermarkets are now offering electric car charging, despite Asda deactivating most of its devices. Figures show that 13% of all 12,800 stores across the UK have facilities available for e-charging. Tesco has the biggest network, though Sainsbury's has seen its largest increase year on year. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back in half an hour. In the meantime, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back. It's 11:07. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Ben Leo, and Pip Thompson. Flaggate still raging.
Looking at these now.
Got some emails flying in.
Well, Robert, morning. Boycott the New England shirt, you say, and wear the old shirt. Teach Nike a lesson.
Yeah, and Tom says it's not an English flag, it's a coloured cross. What next? Removing the 3 lions? And lots of you actually saying this morning, why don't we have an English manufacturer? Slazenger, I believe, is based in Derby. Or, traditionally, the England kit was always made by Umbro, who I think are based in Manchester.
I mean, I think they totally underestimated the reaction to this, and I think the FA has totally underestimated it as well, because I don't think anybody who's written in this morning is defending it.
No.
Everybody is outraged. Somebody somewhere needs to get in touch and say it's OK.
Although we have got a diversity and inclusion officer of some company coming on later to defend it, so that'll be a nice interaction.
Well, so to bring you up to date, this has united all the parties, actually, which doesn't happen very often. Conservatives, Labour and the Lib Dems have united to condemn Nike for its new cross of St George on the England Euro football shirt.
Yeah, so the kit featured the modified flag using purple and blue horizontal stripes and what the manufacturers called a, quote, playful update. And actually, I think it was that playful update thing which riled people the most. A playful update to a country's national flag. Earlier, we heard from Reform UK MP Lee Anderson, who says, probably not surprisingly, he's not a fan.
This, you know, we've got the England team taking the knee. Then we've got the England captain wearing rainbow armbands. Hypocrites, a lot of them. Now we've got this nonsense. Where does it stop? It's a slippery slope. The FA should hang their heads in shame. I tell you what they should do, guys. They should go into a pub in Ashfield on a Sunday afternoon when the football's on and talk to some real people in the real world. And I tell you what, they'll get chased out of town.
World Cup winning goalkeeper Peter Shilton, he spoke to GB News too.
Well, I'm totally against it, which I don't think is a surprise. I mean, I'm a traditionalist, really. But I think, you know, we've seen a lot of design changes on shirts. I think that's to get the fans to buy the new shirt every time it changes. But now they're messing with the colours on a national flag. And, you know, where would it stop once it starts? You know, is the next shirt going to be... going to have more changes in the colour, so I'm against it. I think it's wrong.
And we also heard from Shadow Attorney General Labour's Emily Thornberry.
What have Nike done? I mean, seriously, you can hardly recognise it as the England flag, can you? I mean, England flag is a simple white background and a red cross. Seems to me, why can't they just leave it alone?
So let's talk to our reporter Theo Chicomba now. He is outside Nike's flagship shop in central London. What are people saying to you there, Theo?
Well, it's the eve of the England and Brazil match, and normally on days like today, all the headlines will be full of who's missing, who's not going to be able to play. We already know this week players like Harry Kane, the England captain, and Bukayo Saka are not going to be featuring in tomorrow's game at least. But today, though, the England shirt has been unveiled, and it's got new colours in the cross of St George. And for some people, they feel, well, why has it had to change? And of course, lots of people looking forward to the game tomorrow are now saying, well, actually, Nike should be recalling these shirts and changing them. But Nike have confirmed this morning that they won't be recalling these shirts or asking the designers to change this shirt that they've come up with. And they say it's been inspired by the training kit which was worn by the team in 1966. But we've been speaking to people here in central London, and there's been a mixed view, though, having to say whether or not they agree this change should have been made. And this is what some of those had to say.
England is England, you know, you start changing its colours, you start changing the flags. Yeah, it represents something that's traditional, and perhaps it should stay that way.
Being Welsh, I'm not really bothered, to be honest. But England's England, so it should be the original St George's cross.
I think it could have been better. Like, I think the old shirts, like retro, I think they could have made them more like them, because I think they're quite good shirts. Like, they're the best.
Why change it? Why change it? It's a part of England, isn't it? So I don't know quite why they're changing it all of a sudden.
Well, it's not often that you hear politicians from all sides coming together, unifying on this one issue. We've heard from the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, saying that the shirt should not have been changed. And he's saying that everybody, the flag is used by everybody, it is a unifier, and it doesn't need to be changed. And we've heard from some other voices as well. But certainly ahead of the game tomorrow, this is definitely one of the talking points when it comes to the English shirt.
OK, Theo Chikumba on Oxford Street at Nike's flagship store. Thank you very much. Let's bring in Katie John Went now, who is a diversity and inclusion facilitator. Katie, good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. What's your take on this?
I kind of laugh and smile at a lot of it, because obviously everyone's reacting to the thing that is present here and now, which no one reacted to for like the first few hours because no one could see the little darn flag. It's minuscule on the back of a collar sort of thing. And everyone was saying, oh, great new kit. And then someone spotted the flag change. And then there was all the, oh, this is woke, this is gender fluid, this is weird. And the whole go woke, go broke thing. Well, they're not going broke over it. They're making a fortune out of it at £125 a shirt. So I think it's a storm in a teacup because people don't actually do their history. And yes, it's breaking with tradition, but it's a tradition that is actually very, very short in its own history. And in fact, you mentioned Umbro, and in fact, Umbro had different coloured St George flags on their kit in 2012 for us. They were on the shoulders. They were little minuscule St George flags done in about 4 different colours, all on the shoulders of the kit. So it's happened before. And we've only had the St George flag on the England kit for about 20 years. The 66 kit didn't have an actual flag, and it's the colours from the 66 kit that have been reinterpreted in the flag. But this is not a woke thing. This is what designers do. They have to play with colours and imagery and design to come up with something to sell to people.
Yeah, I mean, they keep saying it's a playful interpretation. Isn't it just plain disrespectful?
I don't think it's disrespectful. It's you put a designer in his studio, give him a colour palette. My ex is a graphic designer. I know exactly what they do. They sit with a blank sheet of paper. They have like a series of colours that have been part of previous kits. And they go, what can we do with this? We have to reinvent the wheel every year to justify a new kit, to justify new sales, to justify the design contract. So they have some blue sky thinking, and then someone came up with this and it got pushed out. Perhaps they should have thought about the reactions, but ultimately it's creating a lot of reaction for the kit. And it's one of those things that a mixture of good news and bad news is still news. So it's getting the kit seen and heard and talked about. And it isn't even exclusively an English flag. I mean, is it one of the cities and teams in Italy and also Barcelona use the same kind of St George's flag?
Yeah, but it's modified. That's our flag. That is the St George's cross. That is the flag of England. And actually, you say that it's not a big deal, but why haven't Nike done this for any other country? Why is it always England on the receiving end of these kind of changes?
We're seen as a threat, perhaps. Who knows? I think it doesn't matter what colour it is if we win.
Thing is, you're laughing about this, but actually, this is something that that all the political parties are up in arms about as well. It's not just a few sensitive members of the public. It is actually every political party and saying, come on, this is a joke. People should not be buying these shirts. I mean, there's calls this morning, I'm not saying from the political parties, but from our email is full of people saying, boycott it, do not spend £125 on them. And that's another issue.
Yeah, I mean, the irony is that the parties are united on it, and it's the one thing that's got people united, which is a complete surprise to anyone. If only actual politics would go down that route, we might solve some of the bigger issues in the country.
How important it is, and that it is a sense of pride, the St George's Cross. It is part of our national identity, so why muck around with it?
Well, it's only going to be for a season, and then they'll change it yet again. Everyone's going to be waving kind of St George's flags in the stadium. So that's the thing that's going to be seen as bigger. As I say, it is a minuscule part of the emblem of the kit, and it has not always been on the kit anyway. So yes, they've messed with it. But we'll get over it, and we'll be more interested in whether or not we win than whatever colour the little symbol that you can't see, except at the end of a photographer's like 500mm lens, you know, when someone's scoring and you see that on the back of their neck, and you're going to be irritated by the flag, or are you going to be irritated by the fact that he didn't score?
You say we'll get over it, but I suspect, I mean, this is just the latest in a litany of things that the FA and the Premier League, and not the Premier League in this case, but Nike have done to really, in my opinion, alienate football fans in recent years. You alluded to it yourself at the top of the conversation. You said that this flag maybe represented or had a hint of maybe some LGBT influence. Why do you think that? What does it look like?
I don't think that at all. I just find it interesting that some of the people reacting to it said, oh my gosh, this is woke, this is gender fluid and things like that. As I say, the colours that they have said they're there for are from the 1966 training kit. They're nothing to do with you know, you can pick any kind of LGBT flag.
Have you seen the bisexual flag?
Yeah, I'm very aware of it. I don't.
Do you not think it looks very similar to that?
Yeah, but if you go onto any LGBT forum, you will find and discover there are literally dozens of flags. You could easily find a flag that it ties in with, and no one's going to be thinking that's a bisexual flag on the back of someo's collar.
Do you not think we've got too many flags, Katie, doing the rounds? There's a flag for everything these days, isn't there?
Yeah, it's creative, but it isn't exactly unifying. Yeah.
Katie, John Went, really appreciate your thoughts this morning. Diversity and inclusion facilitator. Appreciate all your thoughts as well at home or wherever you're watching or listening to us from. John says, why is the white England kit always trimmed in blue? There's no blue in the England flag, only white and red. And then James, since when was purple ever on an England flag? Derek, would Nike dare to change the stars and stripes?
Caroline says, in 35 years as a pub landlord, I applied every year for an extension on St George's Day to keep open and keep serving pints. I was always refused as this was, quote, not important. However, it was granted for all other national days. Nike feel the English flag is not important or sacred. And that's kind of the running theme this morning. It's a very, in the grand scheme of things, a very small thing, isn't it? But as Lee Anderson hinted at earlier, it's the latest in a long line of things where he feels English and British culture is being eroded, slowly hacked away at, and that's why there's such a strong sense of feeling about it.
And there is feeling amongst our leading politicians as well, our political leaders. We're awaiting Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister's response to all this. We'll bring it you here on Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
New rules are going to give staff at NHS England paid leave if they suffer a miscarriage.
Yeah, any of the NHS England staff who miscarry in the first 24 weeks of pregnancy will be able to take 10 days paid leave. Their partners can take 5.
Well, we're lucky enough right now to be able to speak exclusively to the founder of George's Law and national baby loss campaigner, Keely Langthorne. A very good morning to you, Keely. First of all, it's called George's Law because it is a major step forward, and that's one of your son's names, isn't it?
Yes, it is, Anne. Yes, I lost my son, unfortunately, George, 2 years ago. He was stillborn at 23 weeks. I was flabbergasted after having George to know that I was required by law to return straight back to work the next day. So under current legislation in the UK, if you give birth to a baby under 24 weeks, the law says you should be going back to work the next day. So, for instance, I left George at the mortuary on a Thursday evening, had a midwife coming to stop my milk on a Friday, but the law says I should be in work the next day. Such an archaic way of working now, and I don't know why we are not following the New Zealand model and changing law and allowing employees 3 days paid leave. So under legislation in New Zealand, all employees get 3 days paid leave in the event of a miscarriage under 24 weeks. And it is so brilliant to see the NHS sort of taking a stance. They're the UK's biggest employer, 1.7 million employees, and let's face it, they're on their knees in terms of financial hardship. But if the NHS can do this, I don't know why others can't.
Yeah, and you make the interesting point as well that although it is now there for NHS workers, they may have to face sending home bereaved parents who haven't got that right.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. It's 11:23. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Ben Leo, and Pip Thompson.
We are joined again by Amy Nicole-Turner and Emma Webb in the studio. Welcome back. What are we going to talk about? Should we have a little bit of a rest from this England shirt?
I think Ben would benefit from a little rest.
I've been raging off air.
Amy, what do you want to entertain us with?
I think it's only right that we do talk about these WASPI women. So these are the women who missed out on their state pension because in 1995, was it? They changed the age of that the women could take their state pension, but it wasn't properly communicated. And now the Ombudsman has found that the women deserve the compensation. Now, the Ombudsman is essentially the referee, the judge. So now the government, in my opinion, really has a duty to these women to pay them what they're owed, because their retirement plans in so many cases were absolutely thrown into chaos because they went to get their pension and then they had to work another 4 years unexpectedly because it just really wasn't communicated.
The government's not really said, though, if they are going to compensate.
I think the government are reluctant to say this because it will roll into billions, and that added to, you know, the postmasters scandal, the infected blood scandal. This is equating to so much money that the government's going to have to pay.
Stop making grave mistakes then.
Well, exactly.
They
need to pay for these mistakes, like on a moral basis. Many of these women have waited so long that lots of them have died. You know, these women have been waiting such a long time for this. So I think it's really. And
at the moment, the suggestion the payout could be, between £1,000 and £3,000. But campaigners say, actually, women should be getting about £10,000 at least each.
The problem is that actually some of these women are not happy with the compensation because they feel that they have been robbed of a large amount of money. One lady, I think, suggested that the government had essentially stolen £45,000 from her and that this compensation wouldn't be enough. But, of course, the government can't pay out all of that money. It's just simply unaffordable. So, yes, it does seem to be the case that this has been miscommunicated, and the government do keep changing the goalposts when it comes to pensions, and you can see why people would feel that it is extremely unfair. And one of the points that they have made is that they, as the sort of boomer generation, actually worked from a much earlier age, from 14, 15. They've been paying into the system a long time. Then the goalposts get moved. Many of them didn't realise that the goalposts had been moved and then ended up in financial difficulty because they hadn't planned to retire as late as the new goalposts had been sort of pushed back to. So you can see why they would be annoyed. But this is all part of a bigger picture of the fact that we just simply cannot afford the pensions, and we've created this almost sort of Ponzi scheme of a sort of pyramid where we keep having to argue for bringing in more migrants in order to fund the pensions, but of course then the migrants get old too, and that puts more pressure on the system.
Yeah, but people like Amy would say migrants and migration is good for the economy.
Hang on a minute, particularly
people like Amy would be wrong.
Particularly when it comes to our ageing population, we've got 200,000 vacancies in the care sector. Like, if we are going to invite migrants
to take, migrants are good for just working in
to take up those jobs, then there's who's going to staff them? Because I haven't seen a rush of British.
Do you know what, Amy?
However, you know what? I do think that there is a really strong argument for that. A lot of people want to do care jobs, but care jobs are paid terribly. £10.33 an hour you'll be lucky to get. But the care sector is one of the few healthcare sectors which doesn't have a union. They don't have any way of really collectively bargaining with anyone. So I agree, care work needs to be more attractive and there needs to be more on offer, because a lot of people want to do it,
Okay.
but
we are digressing slightly. I do want to know whether it will take another televised drama actually sort this out. You laugh, but it's only when you hear the stories from people and the emotion. I mean, I heard a couple of women talking on the radio yesterday. They were in tears about what's happened to them with this.
And I'm sorry.
Well, there are some women who have had to take from their private pension pot. One woman was saying she had to take from her private pension pot in order to retrain to fill the financial gap between when she had planned to retire and when she was able to take money from her state pension. And so she had to take, I think it was £20,000 to retrain in some kind of... I think it was Reiki or something, so that she could sort of tide herself over.
And do you know what? It's about time the government started looking after its own people, because if there's a will there to compensate these people who deserve it, they can find it. We're spending... We sent £8.5 million to China in foreign aid last year. They're building a base on the moon. We spent £1 million on a Muslim war memorial. We spent $37 billion on test and trace.
You are completely...
Never worked.
And the amount of money that we're spending on housing illegal migrants who are coming across the Channel. We just simply can't afford it.
But it's weird because that whole magic money tree does seem to appear, as Ben said.
If they want to afford it, they can. But they arguably...
But look at Birmingham City Council with the equal pay claim, completely bankrupted it. And I think potentially the government wants to kick this down the can to the next government, because it will cost so much.
Well, there's Tory councils that have gone bankrupt as well.
Hampshire
it's not
has
just
as well,
Labour ones.
Yeah.
Which brings us on to, actually, council tax, because households receiving the first £5,000 council tax bill next week. The levy has soared by 50% since the Conservatives came into power in 2010.
Heinous, isn't it? I think a lot of people will be thinking that they are not getting their value for money. I certainly think that we don't get our value for money in our local council. Our bins get collected once every 2 weeks. There are potholes everywhere. Time and time again, there have been reports by organisations like the Taxpayers Alliance that shows the wild inefficiencies of local government spending. And I think people, just not just because of this, but people, I think, feel that they're almost being milked. People are being treated like a piggy bank. And this money just seems to disappear with no benefit to them at all. £5,000 a year on your council tax bill is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. That's the highest band, but some of the lower bands are even £2,000, I think, in council tax a year is ridiculous.
Said,
people can't afford
if
this.
they were doing their jobs and collecting bins properly, and
people wouldn't mind so much.
You wouldn't care,
but
Amy?
The thing is that I think we're picking up the bill for the housing crisis, because billions, I think £11 billion a year of council money is spent on temporary accommodation. Now, if
for who?
For homeless people, for people who should be in council housing, for people who are entitled entitled to social housing.
Asylum seekers?
But the social housing just isn't there. Asylum seekers or people on lower incomes, if the council houses were built and there, they would pay for rent and generate revenue for the council. Currently, you've got temporary housing, which is just a bottomless pit. It's like renting out hotel
Does that not
rooms
suggest to you
for
then
people.
there's just too many people in the
No,
country?
it suggests to me that we haven't hit our housing targets at all, and our social housing has been sold off, and there's an overuse of private landlords charging massive rents that people can't afford.
I accept that. So why are we taking in?
It's a
Why are
comment
we
on
taking hundreds of thousands of migrants a year?
It? Migrants and house building are two very separate things. We should be able...
I agree with you. We haven't got the infrastructure because...
Not everything comes back down to immigration.
I'm sorry, most of the time it does, actually. I agree with you. We haven't got the infrastructure or the housing, so why is it then acceptable to keep having a city the size of Birmingham here every 2 years?
I think that... Are you talking about the legal migration fee?
Well, yeah, I mean, the boats is another complete crisis.
Because if we look at the number of shortages, it spans across pretty much every sector. We have a shortage of vets, we have a shortage of engineers, we have shortages in every single sector, which actually leads to the other story that we were going to discuss today about the number of economically inactive people in this country.
We've got to go to the news, but actually the latest GDP figures showed that GDP per head, per capita, contracted, which completely blew apart the myth that migrants are good for the economy. But we must go to the news with Sam Harris.
Migration, Ben.
Really?
We do, of course we need migration.
Yeah, skilled quality migration.
Well,
every single
700-odd thousand, that's a figure to be questioned, I think. I think we all...
Look, I'm only repeating the facts of GDP figures, which showed GDP per capita per head contracted 0.7% at a time when the Tories have flung open the doors to legal migration, hundreds of thousands a year. Here's Sam Francis with your news.
Ben, thanks very much. It's just gone 11:30, and I just want to start with some breaking news that's been coming to us in the last half hour or so, that a man who's been described as a loner has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 37 years. That's for the murder of a couple who he worked for by poisoning them with the opioid fentanyl. Luke DeWitt invented fake personas, including that of a solicitor, and rewrote the wills of Stephen and Carol Baxter, who were in their 60s, to take charge of their company. A jury had found that the 34-year-old was guilty on Wednesday of this week, and he was sentenced at Chelmsford Crown Court earlier this morning. The other news leading today, that the Culture Secretary has joined calls for Nike to change the colour of the St George's Cross on its new England football shirt after a row over its design. In a post on social media, Lucy Fraser has said that the multicoloured design is pointless and unnecessary, adding that it's not what fans want. It follows similar comments from the Labour leader, who says the sports brand should revert to the original flag's colours. The company, though, says the change was a playful update ahead of the Euro 2024 tournament in June. Sir Geoffrey Cox has warned that Labour's projected landslide at the next general election could annihilate a credible opposition. The former Attorney-General says a win for Sir Keir Starmer would leave the Conservatives without a front bench, and called it a very dangerous thing for democracy. Speaking to GB News, the MP said that Rishi Sunak is a serious administrator, but he suggested that the Prime Minister does need to reveal more of himself to sway voters. The latest government figures today have shown that more than 800 people have illegally crossed the English Channel in small boats in the past week. 263 reached the UK on Thursday alone as criminal gangs took advantage of a brief weather improvement. The surge has prompted the government to declare a migrant emergency in the Channel, and it takes the total number of crossings for the year so far to just over 4,300. That's 600 more than the same time last year. Meanwhile, delays are expected in the approval of the Rwanda bill affecting the planned flights for asylum seekers. And legislation in England and Wales is being updated to crack down on spiking and to make it clear that it's a crime. The most recent figures show more than 560 spiking offences are reported every month, involving food, drink, needles and modified vapes. Campaigners say the true numbers of victims could be even higher. However, the Home Secretary says the updated law will hold perpetrators to account. Those are the latest headlines. For more, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the code there on your screen, or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks very much, Sam. It's almost that time for Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Emily. Good afternoon.
Hello.
What's coming up?
Good afternoon. Not
Yes.
quite yet. 25 minutes.
But my goodness, we've got a number of big debates on the show today. Of course, the England shirt debacle, but also this was, of course, kicked off largely by an interview that Sir Keir Starmer gave last night. Also in that interview, he was asked, Sir Keir Starmer, this is the leader of the opposition, the former director of public prosecutions, was asked 7 times if he's ever taken illegal drugs.
I saw that, yeah.
Now, he refused to answer, and there are some questions there.
Well, he said he did in his student days and that he, quote, had fun with them, which I thought was quite an interesting answer.
He didn't say he did. He said he had fun in his student days, and he refused to elaborate on what that necessarily means.
So I guess the question is, should politicians be transparent about this? Other politicians have come out and said, and what does this mean for drug policy? Can you advocate for a crackdown, for police time, police intervention? Can you prosecute when you...
for doing the same thing that you...
Well, that's what I was saying to Emma Webb earlier. She said these questions about drug use are inane. And I said, actually, no, because if you've got people making policy and they've got experience, maybe pro or for the thing they're making policy for, it's an advantage.
But another debate we want to have is about whether politicians should be making bets live on air.
Who might this be about? Who might this be
now,
about?
of course, Rishi Sunak made a bet about the Rwanda scheme, £1,000, I think he said. Keir Starmer now making a £50 bet.
Is it
and
more
Lee Anderson
reasonable?
also. Is it the type of thing that politicians should be doing? We might get on a bit of a Puritan to tell us why it's not.
But it's interesting. Is there a sliding scale of acceptability? Is it OK to bet a £5 but not 50 quid? Is it OK to bet 50 quid but not 1,000 quid? Or is this a moral principle?
Well, it was also, I think, what Rishi Sunak was betting on was that people said was inappropriate.
Exactly. So does it matter what you're betting on?
Well,
if it's trivial, is it fine? But if it's actually serious...
I'm glad we're creating some news for your programme.
Thank you very much.
well, absolutely. We'll
it's
run
brilliant.
with it.
But so I like that, where there's, a line running through.
It's symbiosis.
It flows. Symbiosis, yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Look forward to it. Right, all that and more coming up in just over, 25 minutes? Just under 25 minutes. This is Britain's Newsroom. Forgot where we were then. On GB News with Ben Leo and Pip Thompson. We're going to hear from the Prime Minister next on the flag scandal. Does he support Nike recalling the England kits to put the proper St George's flag on? Is he going to mimic what Sir Keir Starmer said? Find out after the break.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Welcome back to Headliners. And Paul, we're going to get straight into Monday's mail for some good old-fashioned traditional male breastfeeding.
Yeah. To answer the question, what is the latest woke hell, Josh? Row as hospitals say hormone-filled milk from trans women who were born male is just as good for a baby as the real thing. It's possible for men, if they pump themselves full of estrogen, to grow larger breast tissue, and they often do.
Or you just eat lots of burgers.
Exhibit A. And once you've done that, it is actually then possible to express or lactate a liquid. Okay. If to that liquid you then add another load of pills, medication, chemicals, whatever, that lactation juice can be fed to a baby.
We don't really... This is not for the sake of the baby. The baby has no benefits from this whatsoever. The studies are very weak on it. It's a bit worrying because... when hospitals started indulging in homeopathy and having, the NHS had homeopathic hospitals, that was worrying because they're supposed to be a trusted authority. And before saying something like this, there should be an awful lot of study done.
I want to shame this hospital. This is
whether it's necessary.
University Hospital Sussex NHS Foundation Trust. That's who it is. And they have written one of the stupidest sentences I have read aloud in the 2 years that I've been privileged to do this show. It says, the term human milk is meant to be neutral and not gender biased.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's incredible.
Yep.
Oh, my God, we're laughing at you.
I mean, and as someone says here, babies are not props. And that's the scary thing. And when we're not focusing primarily on the health of a baby.
No, but the feeling of a person doing it, rather than... It's a bit of an odd way to go, isn't it? So...
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News.
Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Some breaking news now. Welcome back. Rishi Sunak, he has been speaking to reporters about this England shirt controversy. Let's take a look.
Obviously, I prefer the original, and my general view is that when it comes to our national flags, we shouldn't mess with them because they're a source of pride, identity, who we are, and they're perfect as they are.
We know a huge injustice was done to the millions of WASPI women over changes to their state pension. Will the government now establish a compensation scheme quickly and pay the money as yesterday's report recommended?
Well, I know there'll be a lot of interest in this matter, and I completely get that, and hopefully people can appreciate we've only just received the report yesterday. It's very long and detailed, and the right thing for us to do is to go through it carefully and then come back with a considered and thoughtful response. And more broadly, what I would say is I want a country where people can actually put in all their lives and have the dignity that they deserve in retirement. That's why we've protected the triple lock, and the state pension is going up by £900 in just a few weeks' time.
But don't the WASPI women deserve the dignity of fast compensation?
And look, my track record on these things is that we do act, and you've seen that when it comes to the Post Office and the Horizon scandal. We've introduced legislation which is going through Parliament now to quash people's convictions. We've already paid out hundreds of millions of pounds in compensation. I've described that as one of the greatest injustices of our time. I'm determined to do everything to put that right. And when it comes to pensioners, I want everyone to have dignity in retirement. That's why we've protected the triple lock and why the state pension is going up.
So Rishi Sunak speaking in the last few minutes. He says that he prefers the original England shirt and that we should not be messing with our national flags.
He's not going to say otherwise, is he, really? Once Sir Keir Starmer's come out and said it.
On the subject of football as well, Harry Kane, Jordan Henderson, their doubts for this friendly against Brazil. They've missed group training.
Oh, and by the way, is the game tomorrow at Wembley against Brazil, is that going to be the first time they play with this kit? Because I'll be keen to see the reaction from the fans at Wembley, because, of course, when the England team were taking the knee every other game a couple of years back, the boos from around the stadium were massive. They echoed around the stadium.
Why doesn't the England team refuse to wear them?
Oh, they won't do that. They couldn't give a damn what's going on. They took the knee without even thinking about it.
Let's move on to modern technology. Maybe it isn't always better, because a new study has found that almost 90% of drivers much prefer cars with physical buttons, switches that you can push, rather than these touch-screen controls, which seem to be really common in many cars.
Yeah, and they say that they found touchscreens too distracting as they have to take their eyes off the road to use them. So let's get the thoughts of automotive journalist Steve Fowler on this. Good afternoon, good morning, Steve. Not yet. Thank you for joining us. What's this all about then? Are touchscreen displays really a safety risk when it comes to navigating our roads?
Well, let's put it this way. When it comes to safety, Euro NCAP, the new car assessment program, assesses cars on the safety. They do crash tests, and they've now said that they are looking to include within their tests the safety of screens and making sure major functions are, shall we say, analog rather than digital. You know, I do think this is a big issue. If you're a driver yourself and you have one of the modern cars with touch screens, there's so much reliance on the touch screens. Now, I'm a geek. I love my tech. But even I get frustrated that you have to go deep into menus to do things, and the user experience of the touchscreen isn't that good. Now, it's fine on a phone. It's great on a phone because you're not driving, or you certainly shouldn't be driving if you're using your phone and you've got it in your hand in front of you. But I love a screen. It's what we're doing now. You know, we're watching you on a screen, and the screen is great. I don't want to go up and prod it to have to turn the volume up or anything else. I've got a remote control that does that. Now, we're not saying get rid of touchscreens, but we are saying there's an over-reliance on touchscreens these days. We want the buttons back. Bring back the buttons.
Steve, you mentioned there the mobile phone, but doesn't this just undermine the ban on the mobile phone? Because what's the difference? And if you touch your phone at the wheel, it's 6 penalty points and a £200 phone. £200 phone, fine, I should say. So, but touching a screen is no different. Surely it's just as distracting.
You're right. As I understand it, the law is you can't pick your phone up. So you can have your phone in a cradle and you can use your phone, but you can't actually pick the phone up. But I think you're right. You know, I think there are too many driving is hard enough these days. There are enough things on the road, avoiding the potholes and everything else, that touchscreens really are becoming a huge problem. And you're right. If you can't touch your phone, why should you be able to touch a touchscreen? The thing is, as well, they're so far away sometimes. You have to lean forward to touch them. So, you know, as I say, I love a big screen, but bring back the buttons.
So why are car manufacturers, I mean, I think there's Mercedes-Benz, Tesla, Volkswagen, Volvo, they're making their touch screens bigger, more advanced. Why are they doing that when it can be so inherently dangerous?
I think they get caught up in the whole tech thing of it. They're also building cars for the global market in the Far East in particular. They love their tech. They love their screens. You know, I was in a Mercedes recently, and I had the navigation on the screen in front of the passenger, the navigation on the screen in front of in the center, the navigation on the screen in front of me, and on a head-up display. So 4 screens. You know, we have reached peak screen, and I think the manufacturers are beginning to realise that not every customer wants it. Volkswagen, for example, I spoke with Thomas Schaefer, who's the boss of Volkswagen, and he admitted, you know, maybe we've gone too far. They have touch-sensitive controls on their steering wheels. They're putting buttons back onto the steering wheels. And Skoda, for example, part of the same group, use a lot of the same technology. Their boss, Klaus Zellmer, told me putting physical buttons into their cars is very, very important to them, particularly for major functions when you want to change the temperature or put the rear demister on or find the fog light. There are some cars where even operating the fog light has to be through a menu system on the touchscreen.
Yeah, OK, Steve. Great stuff. Thanks for that. I always find half the problem with those touchscreens is if the car's slightly old, maybe a couple of years, you often find, especially, I'm not going to name the brand actually, but the display's quite laggy. So you press a button and it takes a couple of seconds or it even, you know, completely lags out before you get to the bit you want. And obviously, when it's doing that, you're spending more time looking at the screen saying, come on, work.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a what is it called? What do they call it? A multifunction steering wheel.
Yeah.
And then I've got the screen in front of me. So my view is always there.
Have you got a heads-up display where it says the speed and also if you're hurtling? I mean, I had to turn that off. It was completely distracting. And also, if you're going very slowly towards the back of a car, my car goes, whoa, 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 whoa. As if, you know, something terrible's happened.
Cars are too clever, aren't they? Too clever. Right, next, Home Secretary James Cleverly. He has vowed to crack down on spiking. How's he going to do it? Well, we'll tell you next here on Britain's Newsroom.
Hi there, good morning. Welcome to the GB News forecast from the Met Office. It is a damp start out there in the south, a lot of cloud as well, but it does turn brighter from the north, albeit with a cold wind arriving by the end of the day. Here's the extent of the cloud and rain through the morning across East Anglia, the south and southeast of England. Eventually the rain becomes confined to London and the far southeast by the afternoon. Brighter skies arrive from the north and northwest, but with a cold wind and frequent showers already packing in across Scotland, Northern Ireland, arriving into northern England, parts of Wales and the Midlands later. It's going to feel cold wherever you are, though, with that wind coming in from the Arctic, and temperatures will feel more like the mid to high single figures than 11 or 12 Celsius. The wind gets even stronger on Friday night with the risk of gales for the far north of Scotland, frequent downpours, and it's cold enough for those showers to be falling as snow over the tops of the Pennines and the Scottish mountains. A touch of frost possible overnight, but because of the blustery air, well, it's not going to be widespread, just sheltered spots really, waking up to -1 or -2 Celsius. Nevertheless, could affect gardens across the land. Now, into Saturday morning, we're going to see further showers arriving, initially in the north and the west, but just about anywhere by the afternoon could be prone to those downpours. They'll be heavy at times, but they'll be interspersed by some brighter interludes. However, it will continue to feel cold in that wind.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Good morning, welcome back. The Home Secretary, he has vowed to crack down on spiking by updating the law to hold perpetrators to account. Legislation in England and Wales is being changed to make it clear it's a crime.
Joining us now is Dawn Dines, head of Stamp Out Spiking Campaign Group. Good morning, Dawn. Thank you for joining us. What is being proposed here by James Cleverly, and is it up to your satisfaction?
Well, you know, we could always do more, of course, but after campaigning for 20 years, I've got to say that here at Stamp Out Spiking, we're delighted with the news that it's actually going through Parliament now. We're going to be seeing changes, and we're going to be seeing that there is zero tolerance on any spiking-related issues. So that's got to be good for the country.
And what specifically are these changes? Does it involve more training for door staff, for example? More money for testing kits?
What it's going to mean is that the antiquated laws of 1861, it's now going to show a clear message that spiking is an illegal, and it's going to be a criminal offence. I mean, it has been before, but now it's going to be shown that in layman's terms, basically, that putting any extra alcohol, drugs into people's food, drink by injection is all going to be made illegal. And it also means that training is going to be mandatory for people that work within the Security Industry Authority. So all of these horror stories that we've been hearing over the past few decades, when men and women are getting their drinks spiked and they're being put outside of a nightclub and they're in a vulnerable position, they could have been going in and out of consciousness. You know, now we're going to be able to train all of these door staff to show them the consequences of actions, what people look like, what they act like, so we can intervene.
OK, Dawn Dines, head of Stamp Out Spiking, thanks very much. Just very quickly, in 10 seconds, is spiking on the increase? Very quickly.
No, spiking has always been here. It's just now with social media, people are sharing these stories, now it's more prevalent.
OK. Right, that's it from Britain's Newsroom. I'm covering Patrick Christie's tonight. I've got a very special monologue on the small boats crisis and a special guest, the former Australian PM, Scott Morrison. Here is Tom and Emily.
Have a great day.
Looking forward to seeing that. Scott Morrison, big name. But we're going to be talking about something rather concerning that's taken place today. The police are investigating that former Tory donor over his 5-year-old comments. Is that what they should be doing?
Yes, and also we'll have a fiery debate over, guess what, whether we should ever mess with the England flag.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the GB News forecast from the Met Office. We're going to see rain clearing the southeast during the next few hours, followed by sunny spells and showers, but with a cold wind coming from the northwest. We've got low pressure to the north of Scotland, tightly packed isobars, gales in the far north and northwest, and this cold front clears the southeast very slowly actually through the rest of the afternoon, just about lingering across parts of Kent, perhaps East Sussex into the mid-afternoon period. Otherwise, brighter skies follow, some sunny spells, but frequent showers arriving into North Wales, Northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland on that cold wind. So temperatures falling away through the day. In the south, 12 Celsius, in the north, 6 or 7. Now that wind continues to bring showers in overnight, some heavy downpours in places, and the showers will be falling as snow over the hills of Wales, Northern England and Scotland, with some accumulations over the mountains of Scotland. But certainly with that wind, temperatures just staying up at 3 or 4 Celsius in many places, a frost confined to higher parts of the UK. And we start Saturday with some sunshine about, but that chill in the air, and the showers soon get going through the morning. Some heavy downpours with odd rumble of thunder, some hail to lower levels and some snow continuing to build up over the hills.